Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Listen, it's great once again for Callista and me to be back here with all of you, and I want to start by thanking all the women who were so generous and so kind with Callista earlier today, and we're thrilled to be here, and she's here with me today to talk about a number of key issues. I also want to thank Wayne LaPierre for the tremendous leadership that he has consistently provided for the right to bear arms and for protecting the Second Amendment. And I want to thank the National Rifle Association, all of you as members, for the work that you do to make sure that we are in a position to preserve our rights. I also want to recognize John Sigler, who many of you know. John has been a great leader here at the NRA and has provided real leadership also in Delaware, and it was great to be with him again this morning. It's very important that we produce leaders, and in particular, that we produce leaders who are prepared to be on offense and are prepared to carry our ideas and our values into the political conflict. I want to suggest for the National Rifle Association a fairly bold change in part of its direction in order to be even more aggressively on offense in terms of defending the right to bear arms. But let me start and say that I want to first of all speak two positive words about the Obama administration. I know this is an unusual place to come and be positive about the Obama administration, but I think the words goodbye are very positive. And I think we need to focus our energy from now to November, not just to say goodbye to Barack Obama and Joe Biden, but also to say goodbye to those liberals in the Senate who have been blocking passage of the right kind of legislation. And if you understand and believe in our Constitution, you know that we have to win more than just the presidency. We have to win House seats, we have to win Senate seats. To truly get America back on the right track, we have to have one of the most decisive elections in our history. And we need to get America back on the right track because from economic problems to fiscal problems to national security problems, we are clearly a country that has gotten away from the things that made us effective. Now, in the Gingrich administration, we would start with some fairly immediate and fairly direct things. On the very first day, I would sign an executive order instructing the Justice Department to cooperate with the Congress in thoroughly investigating and making public what happened with Fast and Furious and who was responsible. On that same opening day, I would start with an executive order which would eliminate, as of that moment, all of the White House czars. And I would immediately, as of that day, issue an executive order moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in recognition of Israel's right to sovereignty. I would also open up offshore and federal land to the development of American oil and gas with the specific purpose of American energy independence so that no future president ever again bows to a Saudi king. The fact is, we are on the edge of a technological revolution which has enabled us to go from 7 years' supply of natural gas in the year 2000 to over 125 years' supply today. And it's very hard to get Barack Obama to understand this, but we did it by something called drilling. And it turns out that drilling works. Now, the President gave several speeches because I'd been advocating gasoline below $2.50 a gallon, and that so rattled his political consultants that they went out and began making speeches on energy. And the President kept saying, let's make it clear, drilling does not work. And the President, of course, had a solution. I don't know if any of you remember the President's solution. Does anyone here remember what the Obama model? Algae, right? The President promptly said, what we need is algae. Now, we're thinking about this summer having volunteers at gas stations with a jar of Obama algae. And so as gasoline prices stay too high, they can go around and offer people this great opportunity. I want to take just a minute to talk about energy because it's a perfect example of strategic change and how we should be thinking at a national level. If we would have a determined effort to open up federal land, and remember, we own 69% of Alaska, Alaska is more than twice the size of Texas. So we, the people, own over 1.5 times the size of Texas, which means we could give the environmentalists half of Texas for polar bears, walruses, glaciers, mountains. That would leave you an area the size of Texas to develop in Alaska by itself. In North Dakota, the new drilling technology has increased the amount of available oil from 150 million barrels to 24 billion barrels. And the people who are doing it believe the next generation of technology will lead to about 500 billion barrels in North Dakota alone. Now, in that context, we could in fact become energy independent. This would allow us to say to the Europeans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Japanese, the Straits of Hormuz are a problem for you, not us. It would allow us to say to the Saudis, we could say to the Saudis, we will never again tolerate you financing schools that teach terrorism, and we are prepared to exert as much pressure as needed in order to get you to stop. But an American energy program does more than that. It would create millions of new jobs. The unemployment rate in North Dakota today is 3.5%. That overstates it. There are 16,000 energy jobs they can't fill because the 3.5% have the wrong skills. That's why I advocate that we change unemployment compensation to add a training requirement, so if you get the money, you have to be learning during the period we're paying for it. We should never again give people 99 weeks of money for doing nothing. In 99 weeks, you can earn an associate's degree. Keeping all of the energy in the United States will strengthen the dollar by about $500 billion a year that would not go overseas. It would also, at the same time, create several million American jobs. It would increase the revenue to the federal government as people are put to work. Nothing is a bigger step, and I say this as the only speaker in your lifetime, and the only Speaker of the House in your lifetime to author 4 consecutive balanced budgets, and we paid off $405 billion in debt. And so I say to you, if we are prepared to control spending and we are prepared to reform government, nothing is a bigger step to a balanced budget than to take somebody off of food stamps, off of unemployment, off of Medicaid, off of public housing, and put them back to work paying taxes and taking care of their family. Finally, having an American energy program would allow us to take all of the royalties. And Harold Hamm, who's developed North Dakota, believes in the next generation, if we developed our capability in federal land and in offshore, the royalty payments would be 16 to 18 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars to the federal government. That's about the size of our national debt. If we were disciplined, we could balance the budget on an operating fund basis, put all the royalties into a debt reduction fund. And in the life of the younger people who are here today, we would have paid off the entire national debt. So, the right energy program allows you to quit bowing to the Saudis and quit worrying about the Chinese while keeping employed and bringing the price of gasoline below $2.50 a gallon. That is what a strategic program looks like that makes sense for America. And by the way, before anybody tells you we can't get the price of gasoline down, with an 11% increase in the production of natural gas since 2008, the price has dropped from $7.97 a unit to $2.05. The same size drop for gasoline would bring it down to $1.13. I am being very cautious by trying to get to $2.50. If I were truly wild, I would have said, let's go for $1.10 and see if we can't really bring down the price of gasoline, but I'm being reasonable. Let me now focus on one of the central themes of the National Rifle Association. The right to bear arms comes from our Creator, not our government. It is one of the unalienable rights alluded to in the Declaration of Independence. We know this because the amendment starts by saying the right to bear arms. It doesn't grant the right to bear arms. It acknowledges their pre-existent condition. The Founding Fathers knew this full well for a practical reason. When the British troops arrived at Lexington and Concord in April 1775, expecting to force the peasantry into surrender, something they had done quite well in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, they suddenly found they weren't up against peasants, they were up against Americans. They weren't up against unarmed rabble, they were up against trained militia. They weren't up against people who were afraid, they were up against people who understood that the land of the free had to be the home of the brave, and without being the home of the brave, you would not remain the land of the free. Now, many of you know that I like Wayne very much. I like your board. I know almost all of your board members. So I hope none of them will take it personally when I say that I believe the NRA has been too timid. And I want to explain what I mean. A Gingrich presidency will submit to the United Nations a treaty that extends the right to bear arms as a human right for every person on the planet, because every person on the planet deserves the right to defend themselves from those who would oppress them, exploit them, rape them, or kill them. It is not enough to be against the Small Arms Treaty. That keeps us psychologically on defense. The time has come to win the following proposition. Far fewer women would be raped, far fewer children would be killed, far fewer towns would be destroyed if people everywhere on the planet had the right to bear arms, and far fewer dictators would survive if people had the right to bear arms everywhere on the planet. Let's take the George Soroses and the Hillary Clintons head on. They represent a world in which elites disarm the rest of us, so we are then helpless when elites turn sour and when evil reappears. We represent a world in which we trust in the basic decency of millions of people, and we believe they can in fact protect themselves and they can be armed with safety because they are in charge of their life, because God has made them sovereign, not government. Remember, and I'm going to close with this, but I want you to think about this and put it in your hearts. Our Declaration of Independence did not say, "We Americans." It is a universal document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, not all Americans, and that they are endowed by their Creator. The reference point there is to all men, not to Americans. Now, we don't need to go across the planet trying to impose American values, but we do need to go across the planet and advocate human values, and those human values are best captured in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Federalist Papers. And we have an obligation to reach out to our fellow humans and to say to them, if you had the right to bear arms recognized, because you have that right, it comes from God. If you had a government which recognized your inherent rights, a government which realized you were a citizen, not a subject, a government which understood that it is government which is to be limited, not people, then you too would have a chance to pursue happiness. You too could live in safety. You too could fire those to whom you loan power. It isn't enough to watch people move from one dictatorship to another, to watch Libya, Egypt, Iraq, Syria lurch from disaster to disaster. We should think about people, and we should help people understand that they are endowed by their Creator, and we should say that the Second Amendment is an amendment for all mankind and an amendment which will improve all mankind. With your help, this is still a more open nominating process than anyone in the elite media believes. And with your help, if you get a chance to go to newt.org, I would like to have your support to then lead an effort across the planet to ensure that the right to bear arms becomes permanent and is a human right everywhere, which will guarantee its safety here in America. Thank you, good luck, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Gingrich Treaty, I like that. Our next speaker